My name is Insane Raven. I'm back with another episode of Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc, and we are continuing our story with our class trial.
So that means Kyoko got it wrong?
And who was she? Who was
I'm excited I don't have to read these
Saba?
things though. I'll be
She's been
real.
gone this whole time, and when she finally turns up, she gets killed.
It's kind of weird, right?
There's a scene where an important character dies. It has a lot more detail.
So you're saying she wasn't an important character? Which would mean she was the same as us. Just another participant.
Then who's the real
Yeah.
mastermind?
It must have been the Hope's Peak Academy headmaster after all.
No, the headmaster has nothing to do with it.
But how can we trust that? We already know your information about Mukuro was wrong.
Mukuro.
Information was not wrong.
Okay. We're in the middle of a trial right now. Figuring out who killed Mukuro is first and foremost. Please limit all future prattle, chatter, and chit-chat as much as possible.
Fine. Uncovering the identity of the mastermind will have to wait. But remember this. No matter what happens, we will find out who you really are. I stake my family name on it.
I have officially decided to completely ignore all such attempts at provocation. Now, just so nobody's confused, let me state this one more time for the record. The reason we're having a class trial is because a murder among the students has taken place. Hammer that point straight into your big ol' brains!
What you're saying is that both the victim and the culprit are part of the student body?
Then, one of us killed Mukuro?
Wait, no! There's a chance that there's some mystery 17th person who's been hiding all along!
Nope. There are only 16 students in total that have been taking part in these events.
Seriously? Then one of us killed Mukuro?
Who did it? Who's the killer this time?
Get a hold of yourself. We've already narrowed down the list of possible suspects.
We dev.
I'm sure you realize who I'm talking about, right, Makoto? Who the evidence points to?
Based on what those two, yep,
I got it!
me and Kiriko.
You've narrowed it down to Kyoko and me, right?
Kyoko and me.
Why do you say that?
Allow me to explain. Just after nighttime last night, I went to the garden, so I can confirm that at that point, there was no dead body there. So, the murder must have taken place after I left the garden. However, Hiro, Toko, Hina, and I were in the gym the
Tuko?
entire time.
That's how you say that? Tuku? Gross.
That's right. The four of us were there trying to dismantle Monokuma. The whole time, we were very careful not to go anywhere alone. We even went to the bathroom in pairs. All of which is to say, the four of us all have alibis. The only ones without alibis
Are me and Makoto. That's why you're able to narrow down the list of suspects.
Why is the, like, the floor chessboard? So the only suspects now are me and Kiriko. Damn it, I cannot understand. Somehow I have to clear my name.
I have something I'd like to say regarding the whole alibi thing.
Are you thinking of raising an objection?
Well, before that, I just want to try and get a better idea of what time the murder took place. Doing that might reveal some kind of clue.
It was after 7:30.
Somebody go ahead and help him out.
Me and Byakuya can both confirm that the body wasn't in the garden at, well, it was after nighttime for sure. I'd say it must have been around 10 o'clock. So the murder must have happened after 10 p.m.
It also happened after
I
7:30.
guess we can say the time frame for the murder was between then and when we found the body? Oh, but what time did we find the body?
Like
Who saw the
9:30.
body first was Toko, right?
9.
And she went to go get the pickaxe.
I got it! The body must have been discovered at 9 a.m., since that's when Toko went to get the pickaxe.
We already saw this. I'm not gonna read this again.
He's right. It had to be around then.
So we can be totally sure the murder happened sometime between 10 at night and 9 in the morning.
Which is an 11-hour time gap, but I
was
can
already
do.
asleep before nighttime hit, so I don't have an alibi after 10 o'clock. But I'm sure I met up with everyone else before 9 this morning.
We ran into each other in the dining hall, right? That was around... Oh, yeah.
7:30.
right around 7:30. I remember checking right before I went in, so I'm totally sure about it.
Which means from 10 p.m. to 7:30 a.m., you don't have an alibi.
How are you able to piece together basic math? If I can't provide an alibi for that period, then I just have to prove that a murder didn't take place. It didn't happen during the time I don't have an alibi. To do that, I must make it clear when the body ended up in the garden. And it was after 7:30 because that's when the sprinklers go on. Yep.
We've established a time frame for the murder. It took place somewhere between 10 o'clock at night and 9 o'clock in the morning.
Yep, and Makoto doesn't have an alibi for most of that time.
Yeah, from 10 o'clock to 7:30.
That's more than enough time to commit murder, I should think. So Makoto, if you have any objections,
Now would be the time.
Yep.
we've established
Wanted to
a
make
time
sure
frame for the-
that it
somewhere
was.
between 10 o'clock and 9 o'clock in the morning.
Yep.
And Makoto doesn't have an alibi.
Yeah, from 10 o'clock to 7:30.
Shoot!
Okay.
We've established a time frame for the murder. It took place somewhere between 10 o'clock at night and 9 o'clock in the morning.
Yep, and Makoto doesn't have an alibi for most of that time.
Yeah, from 10 o'clock to 7:30.
Damn it. Oh, this isn't going well.
We've established a time frame for the murder. It took place somewhere between 10 o'clock at night and 9 o'clock in the morning.
Yep.
And Makoto doesn't have it.
Yeah, from 10 to 7:30.
That's more than enough time to commit murder,
I should think.
So Makoto,
If you have any objections, now would be the time.
we've established a time frame for the murder. It took place somewhere between 10 o'clock.
No!
Oh, okay, that's weird. That's a weird place to throw that in. Oh, and it's raining outside. Perfect.
Actually, the murder couldn't have happened anywhere near 10 o'clock. It had to have taken place way later.
And what makes you say that?
Because of the sprinklers in the garden.
Yep.
The sprinklers are set to go off right at 7:30 every morning, right? So if the body had been in the garden before 7:30, then it should have been completely soaked.
Oh, hold on. I remember this part perfectly.
I'm glad.
The body was wet. Dripping wet, in fact.
Sorry, Toko, but you're wrong.
I'm wrong? How? Are you
Because you're an
saying
idiot.
The mouth down south was wet? How dare you spew such indecent words?
I did not say that.
I'm saying that the body
Also,
was
mouth
wet,
down
but
south
not
is
because
probably
of the
my
sprinklers.
favorite thing.
What do you mean by denying the sprinkler? Are you trying to deny my entire existence?
Man,
What?
totally wacko.
If you really think it wasn't the sprinkler, you'd better tell us why!
I need to prove this sprinklers that one. All I have to do is hit Togo set evidence that should have should make it clear. Cause I threw water on it. Why are we like? Hold on.
I admit nothing. I hate you. No, no, no! I don't know anything! Hold on! Are you trying to blame me? I admit nothing. I hate you. No, no, no! I don't know anything! Hold on! Are you trying to blame me? I admit nothing. Are you trying to blame me? I admit nothing. I hate you. No, no, no! I don't know anything!
Can't look at anything else besides the smoking dots, cause I'm gonna die if I do.
How can you say it?
This should prove it.
Her hair changes every 5 minutes. It bothers
Just
me.
remember what the body was like after the explosion, and you'll see why it wasn't the sprinklers. The top half of the body was wet, yes, but the bottom half was completely dry.
Bone dry.
If the sprinklers got the body wet, shouldn't the whole body have been wet?
So they only got the top wet? The bottom was completely dry? What a brutal maniac!
I'm so sick of her.
Just more sex stuff.
Move on. The reason only the top half was wet was because while the body was still on fire, I doused it with water. But only the part on fire, the top half.
Yeah.
I guess the
Idiots.
sprinklers really didn't do it.
So if the sprinklers didn't get the body wet, then the murder must have taken place sometime after the sprinklers turned on at 7:30 in the morning.
Which means she must have been killed sometime between then and when the body was discovered at 9.
But
Yep.
Makoto's alibi was only missing from 10 o'clock last night to 7:30 this morning, right?
So there's no way Makoto could have done it. I guess you had an alibi after all. Good for you.
In which case, the only one left without an alibi is Kyoko.
Kyoko's the only one without an alibi, which would mean that Makoto's killer is... No, I refuse to believe it.
I'd just like to say one thing. If you vote for me and I die here, the mystery of this school will stay hidden forever. Which is why I can't let that happen.
Are you ready to battle?
Are you saying you're not the culprit?
Of course I'm not. I have no reason to kill anyone. This is a trap the mastermind has laid for us.
A trap?
We're this far into the game and now you decide to blame me?
Yes.
Stop wasting time!
Hashtag
Stop
blame
wasting
Monokuma.
energy. You really think your little trick is gonna work?
Shut up, you!
You got it, boss! Shutting up now!
Anyway, Kyoko, you actually did have a reason to kill her.
Huh?
She did?
She thought Mukuro was the ultimate despair. In other words, the mastermind behind everything. So she killed her to try and put a stop to all this. Isn't that right, Kyoko?
I mean, is there a
But
reason?
You made one catastrophic mistake. Mukuro wasn't the mastermind at all. And as a result, we were forced into another trial. Something I'm sure you weren't at all expecting.
So that was her motive?
If she had a motive and no alibi, well then, I think it's pretty clear
doubt
Kyoko's
that.
gotta be the culprit.
I'm not the only one without an alibi. Makoto's explanation is still insufficient.
Hold up. Why are you throwing me under the bus, bitch?
The sprinklers didn't get the body wet, but that doesn't mean the murder happened when he said it did.
What are you...
Because you see, there is a way the body could have avoided getting wet.
The
Interesting.
top.
I'm listening.
All it would take is covering the body with a certain something to keep it from getting wet.
Would have been the top.
I got it!
Would have
You're
been the
talking about the
top.
tarp, aren't you?
You catch on quick. You're right. All you'd have to do is cover the body with the tarp, and that'd take care of the water. In fact, that's exactly what the killer did. The dirt pattern on the tarp can attest to that. Only one side of the tarp got dirty, because that's the side that got covered in water. The side that faced down over the body, meanwhile, kept perfectly clean.
But wouldn't it be blue? I mean pink
Proves
with
that
blood.
the killer used the tarp to keep the body from getting soaked.
But why would they go to all that effort just to keep the body from getting wet?
Most likely so they could cloud the issue of when the murder actually took place. In other words, to create an excuse exactly like the one Makoto just gave us.
What it... Why are you trying to get... What? Why would you want to make me look like the killer? No, I can't think about that right now. That top. If it was used the way Kuroko said, the top must have touched her body, right? But the body...
Wait,
Something's not
What
right.
might that be?
I can't worry about her motives. If I don't do something, everyone's gonna think I'm the killer. I have to refute what Kuroko said. Body before the explosion.
With the tarp. The killer prevented it from getting wet.
So the reason the tarp was only dirty on one side is because the sprinkler got that side wet.
But the underside of the tarp, it was totally spotless, right?
It's because that side was protected from the water. Since it was facing down toward the body, of course it didn't get dirty.
Okay.
By covering the body with the tarp,
The killer prevented it from.
So the reason the tarp was only dirty on is because the sprinkler got that.
But the underside of the tarp, it was totally spotless, right?
It's because that side was protected from the water. Since it was facing down toward the body, of course it didn't get dirty.
Ah.
By covering
Skip,
the
skip,
body,
skip, skip, skip.
prevented it from.
So the reason the tarp was only dirty is because the sprinkler got that.
But the underside of the tarp, it was totally spotless, right?
It's because that side was protected from the. Since it was facing down toward the. Of course it didn't get dirty.
Damn it, damn it, damn it.
by covering the body with the tarp,
The killer prevented it.
So the reason the tarp was only is because the sprinkler got.
But the underside of the tarp, it was totally spotless.
It's because that side was since it was facing down. Of course it didn't get dirty.
Oh wait, that was the one I hit. My bad. I got so into shooting down silences that.
The reason the tarp was is because the sprinkler got.
But the underside of the tarp, it was totally spotless.
It's because that side was protected from the. Since it was facing down toward the body, of course it didn't get dirty.
Okay.
by covering the body with
The killer prevented it.
So the reason the tarp was is because the sprinkler got that.
But the underside of the tarp, it was totally spotless.
It's because that side was protected from. Since it was facing down toward the. Of course it didn't get dirty.
I missed? How did I miss? Also, I have to hurry up because it's gonna be an issue in a second.
The reason the tarp was is because the sprinkler got.
But the underside of the tarp, it was totally spotless.
It's because that side was protected. Since it was facing down toward the body, of course it didn't get dirty.
No, that's wrong.
Got it. I'm just glad I was right. How terrible would have been have I not been right at that point. It's like, oh god, no.
Actually, one side being clean is pretty strange if you think about it. Because the blood wasn't dry before the body got blown up, right? Byakuya said it himself. Not to touch it, or you might get some on you. If you put a tarp on a body in that state, it absolutely would have gotten blood on it.
Yeah.
Well, maybe the culprit washed it, so nobody would know they'd used it.
If they had, they would have washed both sides. Just washing the one side wouldn't hide anything.
Oh, yeah, true.
more than that.
Idiots.
What if the very blood we saw on the body was meant as a kind of camouflage?
The blood was camouflage?
After the killer used the tarp to avoid the sprinklers, they then covered the body in blood that didn't belong to the victim.
You mean
What?
someone else's blood? Where would they get something like that?
I know! They could have grabbed some of the blood packs from the nurse's office. That's what Hifumi did, right? When he pretended to be dead?
No, that's not what happened this time.
Now I'm
Killer
confused.
got the blood from right there in the garden.
The chicken! The chicken!
I got it!
They took our chickens! But they would not take our love!
Chicken blood?
When I checked the chicken coop before the murder, there were 5 chickens.
Boop, boop, boop,
But
boop.
after the murder, there were only 4.
So, you're saying someone killed a chicken? And then covered the body with its blood?
Yep.
That's messed up.
Then in this scenario, they would have taken the chicken's body
Something like that is awful.
and threw it into the Monokuma plant.
I wonder if the killer had to get the blood from the scene so they wouldn't be spotted walking around. Anyway, there's no denying that a chicken went missing, which provides a basis for my theory.
Perhaps, but even so, there's one thing that still doesn't make sense. You said the culprit used the tarp to avoid the water and then covered the body in blood, right? But if that's the case, then the blood should have soaked into the ground around the body. But that's not what we saw. Only the victim's clothing had blood on it. The ground was completely clean.
I have to agree, that certainly is strange. Maybe they didn't apply the blood at the scene. Maybe they covered the coat in blood beforehand.
They covered it beforehand?
When you discovered the body, was it wearing the coat like you normally would?
I think so.
I don't remember. That's not something we really looked into.
No.
No, it was wearing
The
upside
head was
down.
through the neck hole, but the arms weren't in the sleeves.
Then that settles it.
Sorry, I'm having a tough time keeping up. What settles what?
They weren't
Here's
wearing
what
the coat.
happened. The murder took place before the sprinklers went off. But the body didn't get wet because the killer covered it with the tarp.
Yep.
Then, later, at the same time the killer was gathering up the tarp, they pulled the coat over the body. The coat they'd already covered in blood.
But why would they do
This series
that?
of cover-ups was meant to disguise the actual time the murder occurred. They wanted us to think the murder happened sometime after the sprinklers had gone off, at 7:30.
Okay.
If that's actually what took place, it certainly becomes possible that the murder happened earlier.
But to pull all
But to
that
pull-
off, wouldn't they have had to go back to the garden after the sprinklers turned off?
That actually wouldn't have been all that difficult.
Wouldn't that been?
They already had the coat ready, so they just had to grab the tarp and pull the coat over the body. They'd be done in no time.
Maybe. But still,
Hina, after you met up with Makoto in the dining hall, did you two stay together from that point on?
Oh no.
What are you doing?
I headed off to the gym, and Makoto didn't show up till later.
What is she doing?
Plenty of time to spare, wouldn't you say?
What are you doing?
that's not...
Don't bother saying it's not possible.
I must admit, Kyoko's reasoning is sound. Makoto's alibi is inadequate.
What is happening right now? And the suspicion falls back on me again. Why? Why is Kiriko trying to entrap me? I don't understand. Oh, why are we getting notes during the class trial?
Well then, it looks like we're back to square one. Makoto's alibi is no good, so once again, our suspects are him and Kyoko.
For serious, man? Which one of them did it? Hey, why don't we let luck decide? Let's flip a coin. 50-50 odds.
The fuck's the matter with you?
See? Pretty good idea, right?
No, not that. I just remembered something super serious.
Well, don't just stand there. Out with it.
Thank you.
That knife we found all black and burnt.
The one we found stuck in the body before it exploded, right?
Shit.
According to the Monokuma file, the knife went all the way through, from front to back. So, what about it?
I'm pretty sure I'd seen that knife somewhere before. That's what I thought when I first saw it. I just remembered.
Now that we have this knife, what are we gonna do with it? We can't use that Doko key, but that's for sure. We don't know what she might do. I don't want it anyway. So what to do? Why don't you hang on to it, Makoto? Huh, me?
It's the knife we gave to Makoto?
You don't seem surprised. You must have noticed earlier.
Yeah,
Then why did you hide that fact?
it's not that I hid it. It's just...
The knife went missing. I couldn't be sure what actually happened last night. I thought maybe I really did kill her.
Suspicious. Very suspicious indeed.
I think Kiriko killed this dude.
Found stuck in the body came from Makoto. Now I'm totally convinced he did it. 12,000% convinced.
Quick question. Why would I do that though? Why would I use a knife? Why would I use a knife that's so clearly pointed to me when I could have used any knife to kill her? Theoretically. Using that knife specifically only brings suspicion to me.
Found lodged in the dead body.
It's the same one we gave to Makoto.
It really is, isn't it? I was afraid of that.
If he did have that knife before, then that seals it. Makoto did it.
Doesn't seal
Just
shit.
because I had the knife once, that automatically makes me the killer?
Well, getting stabbed is what killed her, right? So there's no question. You took that knife of yours and killed her with it.
What a horrible man you are, Makoto.
Listen up, Genocide Joe.
The knife we found lodged in the dead body.
It's the same one we gave to Makoto.
It really is, isn't it? I was afraid of that.
If he did have that knife before, then
It's not me, dudes.
Makoto did it.
Just because I had the knife once, that automatic?
Well, getting stabbed is what killed her, right? So there's no question. You took that knife of yours and killed.
What a horrible man you are, Makoto.
Yeah, okay. I know where I'm going.
The knife we found.
It's the same one we gave to.
It really is, isn't it?
If he did have that knife before, that seals it. Makoto.
Just because I had the knife, that automatically makes me the killer?
Well, getting stabbed is what killed her.
No, that's wrong. Wait, hold on. The stab wound isn't what killed Mukuro. That should be clear from the description of the cover-up we just heard.
Lies! We never talked about what killed her.
No, don't you remember? The killer covered the dead body with the tarp, and then put the bloody coat on it. In other words, the victim never wore that blood-stained coat until after they were dead.
Okay, fine. So what?
So,
So,
oh my
when
god.
we discovered the body, the knife had been thrust through the coat along with the body.
Yep.
Meaning, if she wasn't stabbed until the coat was put on, and she was already dead at that point, obviously the stab wound isn't what killed her.
Maybe
Idiots.
he stabbed her twice. Once to kill her and once to cover it up.
But why would I do that? The exact condition on the body was written down for everyone to see.
I got it! The Monokuma file clearly states that there was only one stab wound.
Sure did. I totally forgot about that.
Then the knife.
Was just another piece of camouflage set up by the true killer.
Setting me up.
They probably stabbed her to draw attention away from what actually killed her. Exploding the body afterward was probably meant to do the same thing.
Probably.
Explosion severely damaged the body, making it impossible to know what really killed her.
Probably.
All the killer's attempt to destroy all evidence of their crime.
So they wanted us to notice the stab wound and then detonated the body afterward. They
Yes.
meant for us to latch onto the knife as the cause of death, then destroy any evidence proving otherwise.
Yes.
Hey, I have a question. It kind of goes back to the beginning, but
Okay.
what's the deal with that explosion anyway? Why'd the body just blow up all of a sudden like that?
If
I have the
you
answer to that.
bothered to put that lump of gray matter between your ears to use, you'd know the answer.
Well, if you're so smart, just tell me.
I'll tell you. I bet some unknown quantum particle.
God, shut up.
Dumb. But even I'm not dumb enough to believe that.
Go ahead, Makoto. Tell her or we won't make any headway on this.
Was for the bomb.
I got it! After the explosion, we found a tiny fragment of something on the ground near the body, right? That fragment reveals the cause of the explosion.
It does.
You know,
Because you have.
That's only natural. Because, of course, we saw the same thing when we dismantled Monokuma. It's part of a bomb.
oh! Then the explosion was because of the Monokuma bomb.
Anyway,
Yep.
the culprit's motive is becoming more and more obvious by the minute. They wanted the knife wound to look like the fatal injury so that we'd suspect Makoto. And the only one who would benefit from that is the only other possible suspect. You, Kyoko.
Kyoko.
Hold on a second, Byakuya.
What's the problem?
Well, I just feel like we need to think this through. We still don't know what actually killed the victim.
And we will find out in the next episode of Storytime. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys then. Bye-bye.